Hello everyone, in this video I'm giving away a free blueprint that will let you spawn meshes along a spline. The link for the download is available in the description of this video. This blueprint was originally designed to work with the dynamic road system which I'm selling on the Unreal Marketplace, but I expanded the functionality so that anybody can use this. This blueprint doesn't just spawn meshes along a spline, it can also make the spline travel next to another spline. This is helpful for people trying to make things along a road like guardrails, train tracks, fences, or sidewalks. You may be thinking that's great, but I don't have any of those assets. Except that you do, and you may not realize it. Unreal Engine has the Quixel Bridge library in which you can choose from thousands of high quality assets for free, with the only caveat being that you have to use it in Unreal Engine. Let me start by downloading the blueprint from the link. I have it in a Google Drive folder. Now I'm just going to place it into the content folder of the project I'm working on. And when I open up my project, it should be good to go. So let me show you how this blueprint works. We have the blueprint called BP Spline Mesh, which will drag into the scene. By default, it has no mesh to run along the spline, so let's change that. I'm going to be looking for things on Quixel Bridge that we can use. If you already have your mesh, you can skip to the next chapter of this video. I'm going to find the assets I listed at the beginning of this video. Starting off with the guardrails, we can search them up and it looks like it comes in modular packs, and that is what we are looking for, because that means that the beginning of the mesh will match with the end of the mesh. So when we stack them right next to one another, it will look like a seamless series of meshes blending into one another. I'm just going to pick the one mesh that's by itself. You can see I already downloaded this one, the little check mark, but in order to download it, you can click it and choose the quality you want, and press download. Wait for it to finish and then press add. One thing you want to be aware of is that these meshes in high detail can slow down your level considerably depending on how many meshes you have repeating in a single spline. I'll show later how many triangles are in the high detail meshes, and you'll see that it's overkill for most projects. Right now, Nanite is not supported with spline meshes in the version of Unreal Engine 5 that I'm using, which is 5.1, but I believe it is experimental in 5.3, so you may be able to use it there. It will probably be fully supported in future versions of the engine, and when it is, I'll definitely recommend for everybody to use Nanite instead. Now that we've checked out the guardrail, let's take a look at the other assets I downloaded. Train tracks are the next one, and they have two different ones to choose from. You can pick either. Then there were fences, and the only one I found was this modular wooden fence. I thought they would have more to choose from, but they add in new assets every month, so maybe I just need to be a little more patient. And then lastly, they have sidewalks. Well, kind of. They expect people to use a material for their sidewalks more than a 3D mesh, but you can download one of the medians that they have here, and it looks very similar. Also, if you wanted to add curbs to roads, you could use these as well. Now that we got our meshes, we can plug in the one we want to use straight into the blueprint. Nothing will happen until we make the spline longer because it doesn't have enough space to start putting the meshes along the spline. We can also see that from a message in the output log. So let's grab the endpoint and drag it until it has enough space. It'll try to spawn as many meshes along the spline as possible, but only by stretching them a certain percentage of the width. By default, it will only stretch 25% of the width in either direction, meaning that if you had a mesh that was 1 meter wide, that mesh would be able to fill a spline that was between 0.75 to 1.25 meters. You could change this in the options though, with the variable allowable scale fluctuation. The default is 0.25, which is 25%, so if you want to stretch half its width, set it to 0.5, or if you don't want it to stretch at all, you could set it to 0. Alright, I'm going to go through the other options sequentially. The second option is disable mesh, and that will stop the mesh from spawning, which may be helpful when you're using high quality meshes along a large spline, and you're trying to edit the spline and it becomes a little too laggy. Just temporarily disable the mesh while you are editing, and you'll get good frame rates. The next option is the overlap. This allows the previous mesh to blend into the next one. Guardrails are a perfect example of this. Guardrails are supposed to be connected, but right now you can tell it's just separate pieces of guardrail in a sequence. If we set this to 30, it now looks like they are interconnected. The mesh vertical offset is pretty straightforward. It will move the meshes up or down that many centimeters. The next two options go hand in hand, and they are the start and end offsets. The start offset controls how far along the spline the meshes should start spawning, and the end offset controls how far down the spline the meshes should stop spawning. This is really useful when you are using this tool alongside another spline, but I'll show that off later. I'll skip over the option we already covered, but in case you need to refresh yourself in what any of these options do, you can hover over any of the options and see the descriptions I added. If you bought my dynamic road system pack, these next two options will look familiar. The first one is disable ground snapping. This spline mesh automatically has the spline snap to the ground, and this option will disable it. I think it's a handy feature to have it snap to the ground, but there are cases where you may need your spline to hover above the ground, and this will solve that. If you do choose to snap your spline to the ground, there may be an obstacle blocking the path of your spline, like let's say a rock, and the actors to ignore when snapping variable will ignore that rock, and any other actors in its list when snapping the spline to the ground. The next option is the closed loop, which allows the beginning of the spline to meet the end of the spline. I have a small road lot over here demonstrating a use case for it. I can put a guardrail all the way around this lot, and now have a bumper cars arena. Another option that this arena uses is the curve scale option, and it allows you to make the spline more curved or less curved. Those that are familiar with splines will also know this as the tangents. This lot has very sharp corners, so I need to adjust the tangents of the guardrails in order to make it more even around the lot. Alright, that was quite a few options, but we're not done yet. We have another category of options that allow you to use this spline system next to another spline system. These options are quite a bit easier to demonstrate, so this should go quick. The first option is asking which actor with the spline are you choosing. For this, I'm going to choose my road. The next two options are asking from what range would you like the spline to follow. 0 is the lowest spline point, and you can type in a really large number to get the highest spline point. The blueprint will know you meant the last spline point of the actor if the number exceeds the amount of spline points that the actor has. You may be thinking, but how do I get it to start or stop the spline in between two spline points? And this can be solved using the start and end offset from earlier. And just like when the blueprint knew the actor's highest spline point, the offset knows how far until you reach another spline point. So if we make the offset some large number, it backs up the mesh all the way to this spline point, and from there, since we know the exact distance, we can type /2, or as Unreal understands it, divide by 2, to get the halfway point between two spline points. Let's scroll back down to the other options, and the next one is distance from spline, and that refers to the distance between the location of the actor's spline versus where this new spline will be placed. Let's set it to 750 instead of 500, and we can see it has moved 250 centimeters further from the road. The next one is pretty easy to explain, it just tells the spline whether to spawn on the left side of the road or the right side. And lastly, the final option, spline name, is necessary for actors that have multiple spline components. If your actor only has one, then don't worry about it, but if it has multiple, it'll probably try to choose the last one listed in your actor's component list. For example, I know that my road connection blueprint has multiple spline components. It needs one to connect to the road, one for the geometry, and two for its white lines. The one I want it to connect to is called main spline, so I have to go in and enter the name exactly the same into the text box, and it will use that spline component instead. There is one more thing I want to point out before I end this video, and that is how LODs, or the level of detail, is important for your spline meshes. This guardrail system seems to be disintegrating before the camera is able to travel that far away, and that is because the Quixel people were not counting on the meshes to bend this much. But if you did need to bend it this much, you may want to change the LOD settings so that the higher levels of detail are visible from further away. Well, I hope you are able to get some good use out of this blueprint. This spline mesh blueprint is being released for free with no strings attached, but if you'd like to help out the channel, there are a couple of ways to do that. If you like the coding of this blueprint, you may like the dynamic road system we've released on the Unreal Marketplace. It's a very different approach to making roads since it builds the geometry in the editor and bakes it to static meshes for you so that you can use nanite with roads to gain a lot of performance back for your project. Also, I may make more videos like this in the future that feature free blueprints, so you can subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. More than anything, I just hope that this blueprint is able to save you some time for your projects. Thanks for watching, until next time.